This video presents declassified and licensed material of the Global Institute of Logic and Cybernetics.
Most modern distributed digital networks operate on a basic premise of federation. Disparate nodes communicate, agree on a state, and move forward. But over time, isolated local states naturally experience semantic drift. Nodes process equivalent data, but encode the results with slight, seemingly harmless variations. What begins as a minor formatting difference scales into silent state mutations. True network forks become obfuscated because the diagnostic data required to identify them no longer aligns across the network. Standard cryptographic consensus mechanisms, like Byzantine Fault Tolerance, secure the transport layer but ignore the underlying semantic meaning. They validate a corrupted state as long as enough nodes agree on it. An infrastructure built to rely on trust-based semantic agreement rather than rigid mathematical law is guaranteed to eventually fracture. Invariant-Preserving Transformation, or IPT, replaces consensus with a Constitutional Constraint System. The mathematics dictate that any lawful transformation preserves the system's invariance, regardless of the sequence of operations. We move from asking nodes, "Do you agree?" to proving, "Is this transition mathematically lawful?" Every state transition, local diagnostic, and observer action is forced through invariant-preserving logic gates. If an action breaks the invariant, the network rejects it immediately at the kernel level. IPT is an execution fabric. It renders arbitrary rule changes and undetected state drift mathematically impossible. When nodes diagnose network conditions, they often reach the exact same conclusion using different check orders or serialization formats. This harmless formatting variance makes cross-node comparisons brittle. It breaks distributed coherence proofs and provides cover for adversarial drift, as true anomalies hide within the noise. The first pillar of IPT is trace normalization. Consider two raw diagnostic traces from different nodes. They represent the same semantic truth, but their structural execution is chaotic. IPT applies a canonical normal form function. The raw data is forced into 6 structural sections: header, features, exclusions, decisive basis, final class, and warnings. This strips away all local encoding choices and harmless variation, preserving only the substantive decision logic. Semantic agreement requires a canonical, comparable format to be verifiable. Live operational networks constantly encounter mixed-case ambiguities, situations where multiple overlapping errors trigger simultaneously. Administrators typically resolve this by flattening the uncertainty. They prioritize one cause, ignore the rest, and manually clear the alert to keep moving. The second pillar, diagnostic purification, strictly prohibits this behavior. Under IPT law, a mixed-case structure is a recorded coexistence of active failure causes. To resolve it, the system executes a 9-stage canonical purification procedure. Each competing cause must be struck down by explicit mathematical witnesses until exactly one verified pure cause remains. In the diagnostic subsystem, purification demands mathematical proof. Operational preference is removed from the equation entirely. Once states are normalized and purified, federated nodes must produce identical cryptographic anchors to prove their alignment. A severe vulnerability exists where nodes achieve identical runtime states but package those states into divergent, incompatible archive bundles. The third pillar is distributed anchor convergence. Nodes package their runtime data into verified, lawfully equivalent bundles. These bundles are forced to converge into identical cryptographic outputs, establishing cross-node archive stability. Any unjustified difference at the emission layer is flagged immediately as unlawful anchor drift. An adversary might attempt to fake this convergence by inflating witness claims or smuggling in unverified dependencies. IPT counters this through strict proof stratification. Every theorem and state claim must pass through a 3-tier closure model: semantic verification of the logic, formal verification of the code, and archive closure. Anchor convergence, gated by stratified proof, ensures that counterfeiting an archived network state is mathematically impossible. Human intervention, specifically operator Fiat and rogue administration, remains the most persistent vulnerability in secure networks. These actors can unravel technical safeguards through direct intervention. To close this gap, IPT employs the branch operating system. It enforces a mechanism called constitutional binding. The OS elevates theoretical branch invariants into non-bypassable runtime governance laws. When a human operator issues a governance action to mutate the network state, that action is evaluated by a constitutional clause. If it violates the established invariant logic, the command is instantly denied. The system cleanly distinguishes between lawful structural reconstitution that preserves branch lineage and unlawful constitutional amendment driven by operator whim. Human administrators operate without the power of Fiat. They are constrained by the exact same invariant math as the baseline data. From trace normalization up to the constitutional OS, IPT operates as a single interlocking execution fabric. These four pillars systematically eliminate procedural noise, operational ambiguity, archive drift, and administrative overrides. Every runtime verdict carries a reconstructible witness chain, flowing seamlessly from local verification up to global constitutional enforcement. Trust-based consensus architectures are obsolete for elite state-level infrastructure. The future of high-stakes execution cannot rely on disparate nodes agreeing on what data means. It requires strict, unbypassable mathematical constraints on what data is permitted to do. Trust is an operational liability. True
This
digital
video presents
continuity and
declassified and
security
licensed
at the
material of the
highest
Global
echelons
Institute of Logic and
exist
Cybernetics.
solely as immutable constitutional law.